Week one of Kouri Richins' murder trial wrapped up, and we're going to get you caught up on everything that happened this week. We are going to begin with today, Friday. It was a full courtroom, 24 people, including some of Kouri's family that was there. We first heard from Carmen Lauber. She is the former housemaid that is accused of supplying Kouri with the drugs that killed Eric Richins. She was cross-examined by Kouri's defense team. They continuously tried to discredit her credibility. And even the bailiffs had to get involved today. They tossed 3 people out of the courtroom, 2 for taking pictures and another person for drawing a sketch.
Good afternoon. Carmen Lauber is her name. She was the former housekeeper for the Richins, spent all day, really in the afternoon hours on the stand. The defense had an opportunity to cross-examine for a little bit, but they needed to pick that back up this morning. Then we had the re-exam by the prosecution. The defense really focusing on discrediting what was said yesterday during the prosecution's timeline they were trying to paint about when those drugs were purchased, who they were purchased from, where they got them, and where they were sent to next. And the defense really hammered in on that. Take a listen.
That time you said you only purchased 2 times from Mr. Crozier, correct?
Correct.
Now you're saying you purchased 3 times.
Correct.
I know you've changed your story, and you're now saying there was another purchase, but we're talking about what you told them a year after these events. Do you understand?
Yes.
Well, it's definitely a tactic that's being used to try to get the jury to understand, is this credible testimony, and is this testimony that they should be really taking into account? The re-examination from the prosecution, by the way, did ask a lot of those same questions, but tried to get more clear, succinct answers, and also really harped on the fact that Carmen Lauber spent 23 days in jail total for crimes that she has committed, and she's been on the stand because she has 4 grants of immunity in this case, and she recognizes she needs to tell the truth. She swore to tell the truth, and the prosecution made sure that the jury was aware of everything she was telling was truthful. But for now, Carmen Lauber has left the courthouse for the day. We are on recess here, and after the lunch hour, we will be having more witnesses that will be called by the state. Another live report from us coming up from Park City here on 2 News at 4, 5, and 6 o'clock tonight. For now, reporting live from Summit County, Brian Schnee, KUTV 2 News.
Now let's take you all the way back to Monday of this week, day 1 of this trial. It was once again a packed courthouse, and people were waiting outside to get in, beginning at 3 or 4 in the morning. Trial started where we first heard from several members of Eric Richins' family.
With temps below freezing and nothing but a lawn chair, Selena Armitage lined up to secure a coveted wristband and gain entry into the courtroom.
I just love watching true crime trials.
She's a true crime junkie from West Valley City who typically watches trials on YouTube.
I just wanted to experience a big trial, and it hasn't disappointed today.
Up to 24 members of the public are allowed in the courtroom each day. This could include crime aficionados like Selena, court watchers who observe trials for errors or inconsistencies, and community members who are invested in the verdict. All seats for the public were filled today. How would you describe the energy in the courtroom?
Okay, the energy, that's interesting you asked, because energy with the prosecutor is so different. But when the defense attorney gets up, you just can feel the change.
Selena described the jury as zoomed in on defense attorney Kathy Nestor as she made her opening statements and laid out their narrative of what they say led up to and followed Eric Richins' death. Were there any key moments in either the opening statements or the first 2 witnesses that we saw? Anything that stood out to you?
When they brought his father on, that was very sad. I know they have to do that.
The state called Eric's father, Eugene, his sister, Katie, and her husband, Clint. Direct, tense, and sometimes emotional testimony followed. Selena says not reacting is a challenge.
I mean, at home, there's times I'm hollering at my TV, or I'm just like, oh, I cannot believe that. And today was a little frustrating for me, but I just, had to keep my facial expressions stable.
She says she plans to be in court at least twice a week and is preparing for many more early mornings in Summit County.
Now, day 2 of the trial on Tuesday, we were introduced to some never-before-seen body cam video of deputies that first arrived on the scene inside Eric Richins' home, and we heard a lot about the toxicology report and what was and what was not inside Eric's body at the time of his death.
Today was day 2 of the Kouri Richins murder trial. Much of the focus on the blood test results from Eric Richins. Brian Schnee was in the courtroom again for most of the day. He's live for us outside the Summit County Courthouse. Brian.
Well, a lot of the conversation today was talked about medication. Where did you find this item when you searched the house? Where did you get this piece of evidence? How did all of this come about? We're really getting into the weeds here. About 8 people started to take the stand today. So we've actually had a lot of members of law enforcement make their way through, some EMTs, some medical experts. One of the interesting parts is when you hear this story, when you've heard about what happened or what is alleged to have taken place, the word fentanyl comes up, and we finally got into how the fentanyl may or may not have gotten into Eric Richins' body with a forensic pathologist, someone who is retired and worked for the Office of the Medical Examiner back in 2022. And they discussed this at length today. Take a listen.
Give an idea of where the fentanyl might be coming from, because the question would be, was it orally ingested or was it injected, or, you know, trying to narrow that down a little bit. And so that was part of the rationale for doing the gastric testing. The decedent did not have a history of any kind of illicit drug use or prescription medication abuse. So the fentanyl level should have been 0. There should not have been any fentanyl or norfentanyl present. The fact that I have fentanyl present tells me that fentanyl was obviously ingested at some point.
Now on to day 3, Wednesday of this trial. We heard from Chelsea Gibson. She is the lead crime scene tech overseeing all of the evidence in this case, but it was a very abbreviated court session because after a short recess in the morning, the judge came back and said due to a scheduling conflict, he had to call things for the day.
A very quiet afternoon in Summit County, Utah, because court was dismissed relatively early this morning. Judge Richard Mrazek heard about an hour of testimony from Chelsea Gibson, the lead crime scene technician there that had been on the stand the day before. But Mrazek took a scheduled break around 9:30 this morning. He called it a scheduling conflict, said it would last about an hour. When he came back about 10:45, he actually just dismissed the jury and the person that was on the witness stand and both parties and everybody in the courtroom for the day, citing unforeseen circumstances. Here is the judge talking to members of the jury.
Between now and then, same instructions. Please do not speak about this case with anyone. Please do not allow anyone to speak about the case to you. Please do not read, listen to, or watch any reports about this case from any source. You just have to affirmatively avoid those things. Please don't do any searches on the internet about this case at all. Thank you for your patience. Please travel safe. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m.
So everything gets going here tomorrow, Thursday, at 8:30 a.m. That means Chelsea Gibson, who has been introducing a lot of evidence and talking to both sides about the investigation and how that went with photographing the scene and looking through the home that belonged to Kouri and Eric back on March 4th, 2022, and then going back to serve a search warrant. She will have to take the stand 3 days in a row. The defense had their first opportunity to cross-examine Chelsea Gibson today. Here is some of that dialogue.
And did you open the drawers and photograph what was in the drawers of the nightstand?
I don't believe so, no.
Were you aware at that point that a hydrocodone bottle had been removed from one of the drawers?
I didn't know where it had come from, and it was taken with the decedent.
Okay. So you did not take the hydrocodone bottle into your custody?
No.
Did you open it and photograph the inside of it?
I believe that was OMB Sessions.
Okay. So you can't testify whether there were pills in it or not at the time?
No, I cannot.
So the defense has done a really nice job, in at least what we've seen here, trying to pick apart how the evidence was gathered, finding gaps in some of those things, finding things perhaps that maybe they did not do to convince the jury of certain things not being done in relation to what had been collected. Meanwhile, the prosecution focusing on fentanyl, focusing on poisoning. We have a long way to go in this trial. Day 3 shortened, likely not as planned. Obviously, that will have to be made up somewhere. We'll see if things speed back up here on Thursday for day 4 of the Kouri Richins trial in Summit County. Reporting from Park City, here on ARC Salt Lake, I'm Brian Schnee.
Now, day 4 in the trial of Kouri Richins. I am your host, Jim Spiewak with KUTV2 News. And joining us once again, Nathan Evershed, who is a defense attorney not associated with this case, but he's here every day to help us add a little extra context. Nathan, once again, thank you very much for being with us.
Happy to be here.
So day 4, a lot happened today. We saw a very abbreviated court session yesterday because of a scheduling conflict with the judge. Today was much different. We got to a ton of stuff. What really stood out to you on day 4 of this trial?
One of the most critical witnesses of the case, which I know we'll be talking about, the housekeeper, took the stand, and really, really essential witness, and one that the defense is really hyper-focused on, as they should be. But also, we had a lot of other witnesses, the toxicology and the scene and those things being wrapped up as well.
So based on all of your experience working in trials, does anything surprise you, or is this sort of the standard progression of how these types of cases will play out over the course of a trial?
I think it's a really good move by the prosecution. They've now covered the scene, they've covered the medical examiner, and then they're wrapping that up with toxicology. And now they're transitioning towards where did this fentanyl even come from, and eventually they're going to be transitioning towards motive as well. So it's easy for the jury to follow.
So that's exactly what we're going to talk about. So before we get to the former housekeeper, which, as you mentioned, is one of the very, very important and key witnesses in this case, we're going to talk about the toxicologist. This is the person that got on the stand today, and she spoke about what was in Eric's body at the time of his death. And we do have some sound that we're going to cue up for you right here, and go ahead and play that sound. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what the toxicologist said.
In this case, what did you find in the confirmatory test?
Fentanyl and norfentanyl.
Okay, did the confirmatory test identify levels?
Yes, so fentanyl was reported at 15 nanograms per milliliter and norfentanyl at 3.3 nanograms per milliliter.
All right, so Nathan, maybe an obvious question, but what is being laid out right here?
That they know how Eric Richins died, that it was an overdose on fentanyl, and that there was quite a significant level of fentanyl in his body.
To that point right there, 3 nanograms of fentanyl is considered a deadly lethal dose. Eric Richins had 15 nanograms of fentanyl present in his toxicology report, so that's 5 times the lethal deadly limit that was in his body. One of the things that stood out to me, I didn't hear any testimony about THC being found in his body, and there has been some discussion about potential THC edibles or gummies that may have been taken at this point. Is there anything that we're to make of that? Because there's also been talk about a fentanyl-laced cocktail as well.
Correct. And so there's been a lot of focus on find THC gummies or looking for that or those things. So it's rather curious that there'd be so much focus on that when that's not in his blood, which is a really good thing for the prosecution to point out. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've heard a lot about this. I guess what was in there? THC.
Okay, so then the trial moved on to one of these really important witnesses, Carmen Lauber. She's 54 years old, and currently she works with people with disabilities, and she got on the stand and immediately testified that she does have a history of drug use. She has admitted to selling drugs in the past, has a criminal history with drugs, possession, distribution, felony convictions around drugs. She did testify, though, or we learned that she was testifying because she was granted immunity to testify in this particular case. So for those that might be unfamiliar, what are we looking at here? Some people might say, well, she's protecting herself. What do we make of that?
Well, and that's certainly what the defense is saying, is that she's protecting herself. Immunity just means that she does have constitutional rights where she's not, where the government can't force her to testify against herself. But in this case, the government's saying, well, if you testify truthfully, we promise that we're not going to use these words against you. As a matter of fact, we're going to give you a better deal with these cases that are here. So weighing her options, she decided to take that deal, certainly with the advice of counsel as well. And that way, what is said in court cannot be used against her at any further prosecution.
And here's why the prosecution wanted her to testify. We're going to cue up some more sound right here. This is of Carmen talking about how, in her words, providing Kouri with drugs, at first painkillers. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and play this right here. Take a listen.
Did Kouri Richins ever ask you to purchase for her illicit drugs?
Yes.
How many times?
4.
Did you purchase illicit drugs for her?
Yes.
How many times?
4.
So when the jury hears that, what do you think jurors are thinking at this point?
That a big question has been answered potentially, which is, how did Kouri Richins get fentanyl? And in this case, with that being potentially answered by the prosecution, that's a massive, massive answer. Now, you can see why the defense would be focused so much on her and trying to discredit her, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a second. But the prosecution is, they could have proceeded with this case without someone providing this, without evidence of how this fentanyl came to be. They say that they have the answer to that, and it does make their case a lot stronger. What I mean by that, Jim, is that the jury believes the housekeeper. It is very difficult for them to say not guilty in this case. If they find her credible, believing that Kouri got fentanyl from her, then what's the next logical step, especially with that timeline? So it's a huge witness, and if the jury finds her credible, which they may or may not. I've had a lot of witnesses over the course of my career, people coming in jail and prison jumpsuits and having long histories, and sometimes juries find them to be very credible, and sometimes they don't find them credible at all. So it's really interesting to see how the jury would view her, and there's reasons to find her credible, and there's reasons not to find her credible.
And Carmen was asked a lot of questions about some of these alleged buys, you know, starting at about $600 for these pain pills originally. And then over the course of 4 buys, according to her testimony, it increased to fentanyl, which got a lot more expensive. And she explained how she would go to the home that Kouri Richins was flipping at the time, and that money would be stored in the shed, and, you know, go inside and drop the pills off in an envelope. And she told a story about how she buried one of the envelopes, you know, in the backyard because she just didn't want to leave it in a shed. So there was a lot of finite detail in her testimony about these alleged drug buys that, according to Carmen, this witness, Kouri had initiated. So again, it started with an alleged purchase of pain medication, of pain pills. And then the next piece of sound that I'm getting ready to play for you is where this witness is testifying about how the potency of the drug amplified from pain medication to fentanyl. So I'm going to go ahead and play you this right here, this piece of testimony. Let's take a listen.
When he got back to you, what did he say?
He said he had a buddy that had some fentanyl pills.
What then did you do?
I had texted Kouri back and told her that I had a friend that could get them, but they were fentanyl pills.
So you told Kouri you had a friend, a hookup for fentanyl pills?
Yes.
How did Kouri Richins respond?
She said, okay, go ahead and get them.
So my question now is we're hearing from this witness alleging that Courtney said, yeah, go ahead and get fentanyl pills. But does that necessarily mean that it was those pills that ended up in Eric's system?
Yeah, and that's an argument that the defense could possibly present. It's not a very good argument, the sound argument they want to be presenting, just to say, well, it could have been any fentanyl pills, not just the ones that Carmen gave to her. And so it's again, if the jury finds her credible, I mean, she answers the question. I mean, it was interesting to see how the prosecution did this. They say he died of fentanyl, and now who do we call next? Or within a couple witnesses, the person that says I got fentanyl for Kouri Richins. That's pretty powerful stuff for the prosecution. Again, the defense has their claims on this as well, but pretty powerful.
So speaking of the defense, we'll get to that in a minute. There's one more piece of tape that I would like to play from this specific witness, sort of putting an exclamation point on their testimony with her. Now, this piece of tape that I'm about to play, just to set it up, starts to explain there's this line of questioning. Okay, after Eric had passed away, the prosecution asked, did you talk with Kouri at all after Eric passed away? And did you talk about his death, about his passing? And Carmen said, yes, I did. So here is a little bit of that exchange from that piece of testimony.
Yes.
Did you ask Kouri Richins about Eric's death?
Yes, I did.
What did you ask her?
I said, please tell me these pills were not for him.
Did she respond?
She did.
How did she respond?
She said, no, they were not. Eric passed away from a brain aneurysm.
Okay, so Nathan, we just heard 4 different pieces of sound from this witness. Kind of give us the arc from the prosecution standpoint of what they really tried to lay out to the jury here after listening to all of that. It's kind of like from the start, allegations that Courtney asked the housekeeper all the way to discussions afterwards.
One way to look at this is think about a universe where the prosecution doesn't know how Kouri Richins got this. And it's just hypothetical. You can imagine how much better the defense would be to say, what, you have this person in this upper middle class neighborhood and home doing with all this stuff, and we don't even know how there's no way she could have gotten this. And now the prosecution are trying to put that question to bed. Not only did Kouri Richins know Carmen, but Carmen had come over every Friday, was a housekeeper, knew the ins and outs, and tries to give very credible details as to like how this whole thing was arranged and whatnot. Now, she does have her baggage, which I know we'll be talking about. But if the jury finds that credible, the prosecution's job is so much easier because it's not that far from obtaining fentanyl within days of him dying to then, hey, providing that fentanyl, which was found in his system.
And so basically the prosecution today has said to the jury, I am placing this person accused of murder with the drug that was found inside Eric's body.
Yes. It's essentially like, here is the smoking gun, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Okay, so after the prosecution wrapped up, it was shortly after that the prosecution wrapped everything up. The defense got a chance to cross-examine. And from listening to the testimony of the cross, they brought out binders of transcripts of her depositions and previous things that she had said to police and to investigators. The defense immediately went into talking about her criminal history, about her background, about her use of illicit drugs, her selling of illicit drugs. Maybe an obvious question, why is the defense coming right out with that in their cross?
They have to dismantle her credibility. If the jury finds her credible, it's, again, their case is such an uphill climb. It's incredible. But I thought the cross was quite effective by Ms. Lewis. It was very thorough. There's so many transcripts going back and forth with previous statements and with her own baggage of criminal history and all of these things and the benefit of immunity and all of that. So there's a lot that can be obtained here. And so that's the reason they have to find, they want the jury to find her not credible, to not put any kind of credibility into her testimony whatsoever.
Is every jury different? Do they weigh a lot of the history and the baggage that a witness may have versus what they're saying right here? Or does it all play into its credibility and every situation is different? I mean, if someone is admitting, yes, I did this in my past, but this also happened, does it sway a jury? Do they put a lot of emphasis in your experience on what someone did in their past?
They can. What I have found, Jim, in dealing with hundreds of witnesses like these, the jury wants, if the jury likes the individual, that almost overcomes everything. If they find that the affect is sweet and is understandable, and this person's had a troubled past, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that can go a long way. And that's probably where the prosecution is probably taking a little bit of a win today, because she does come off that way. But if someone comes off as calcitrant or not believable or something like that. So a lot of it is personality at the end of the day. It's not just baggage. It's not just what's happened in their past, but it's how they can explain that. So both sides have something to work for here, or have something that they can hang their hat on. On the one side, that the defense has a lot of issues that this witness has in the past, but the prosecution, a lot of details, a good affect, quite a likable person. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that jury takes it.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cue up some sound from this cross-examination of this witness right here. Again, this is Kouri's defense team cross-examining
Did they review your answers with you?
Yes.
All right. So they reviewed with you when the drug buys happened, correct?
They would ask me the questions and I would answer.
Did they correct you if they thought your answer was wrong?
Not really, no.
All right. Did they practice cross-examination with you?
And I'm going to pause it right here and let everybody know that what she's questioning her about is, did the prosecution, in preparation leading up to today's testimony, did they coach you in any way? Did they rehearse? Did they tell you what to say? Did they feed you answers? This is her responding to that line of questioning. Let's go ahead and continue to listen.
Yes.
So they did we call it a mock cross. Someone pretended to cross-examine you. Is that fair?
Yeah, they kind of just brought up how you were going to bring up my past, how I was going to feel.
Okay. That's all?
Yes.
All right. Did they tell you how to answer the questions that I might be asking you?
No.
They can give you any advice on how to answer the questions?
No.
Did they help you put the pieces together so you would remember what to testify to?
Nathan, what do you make of that line of questioning and answer?
It's very effective, very effective. I mean, you know how they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, credibility is in the eye of the beholder. How that jury views all of that and understands all that. The defense has a lot to work with in terms of, potential questions, or getting her ready, getting her prepared, the grant of immunity, her own record, and whatnot. Certainly, they're going to come back in closing, because they have to, and just say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you can't put any credibility into her testimony, disregard it completely. And they have to, because if they did regard it, if they did find that to be quite believable, it's very, very difficult. But the defense has a lot to work with. She's going to continue with the cross-examination tomorrow, and it's going to continue very thoroughly, and it has to. I mean, I think Carmen was on the stand for hours, and that cross-examination, it doesn't seem to be anywhere close. So very good questions, trying to attack the credibility of a key witness for the prosecution.
And to your point of, does a jury believe this or believe something else, or do they feel that this person is credible? Such an important piece of this case, such an important witness. I guess we won't know the answer to this until we get to a verdict. And this has to be one of probably a lot of moments over the next little more than 4 weeks as this trial progresses, that we're going to be asking this question: is the jury buying the prosecution side? Is the jury buying the defense side? And we really won't know until we get to a verdict.
100% right. And this is where nobody can say exactly how the jury's thinking, but because through our own unique eyes, maybe she looks credible or not credible, but it's that jury, and we don't know who they are. They're randomly selected. They have to be fair and impartial. And I've seen it multiple ways, and I would have to stop guessing. You kind of get a feel in the courtroom, but you have to stop guessing, because sometimes I would talk to a jury afterwards and say, well, what do you think of this witness? And to my surprise, they found the person very credible. To my surprise, found the person not credible. And there's a lot of things that are there. And, everyone has their own perspective and their own backgrounds and whatnot. So you're right, 100% right, Jim. You don't really know how this is landing with the jury until the verdict.
And for those that are unfamiliar, when we broadcast these trials, we are strictly forbidden from showing any identities of the members of the jury. That's why you will never see them. You will never hear them while the trial is going on. As you mentioned, after the trial, that can be more of a fair game situation. But during the trial, we will never see the jurors. We will never hear from them. You do not want to know what they are thinking, and they are not supposed to be reading anything or watching anything about this case as it goes on. Nathan, give you the last word. Anything else stand out to you today?
Yeah, just about the jury itself. That's why it's a little bit hard for us because we're not there to see maybe their reactions to any of this. And I would just note something curious that happened today. Apparently someone was taking a sketch of the jury and that person was booted out. Their sketches were actually confiscated and that person's not allowed to return. A jury member is actually who saw that. So really, it's an interesting case. The most weird and random things are happening in it right now. And so that's just another one of them.
Yeah. And that brings us back to Friday, where 2 new witnesses were introduced after Carmen's testimony wrapped up. One of those witnesses was the person who testified that he supplied the drugs to Carmen, who then supplied the drugs to Kouri.
Right now, there's an undercover officer actually being testifying on the stand, which is why the live stream is down, by the way, for those of you watching this live to preserve identity. You mentioned the housekeeper. Carmen Lauber was on the stand earlier today, has been released for the day, but still can be retained by subpoena. Carmen talked about a man named Robert Crozier, who she alleges that she purchased pills from. Crozier was on the stand most of the afternoon and was not helpful, perhaps, to the prosecution, trying to jog the memory of Robert Crozier. How many times did you sell these pills to Carmen Lauber? And Carmen told the prosecution and the defense numerous times, 2, maybe 3, but that is not what Robert Crozier told the court today.
I'm not even real clear if I had met her a second time. To be honest with you, I know that I met her the one time, and it might have been twice, but I really, it was 4 years ago, so I don't really remember if I met her more than once. But if it would have been the same thing, I would have gotten the money from her, given her the things, and left.
Do you know that investigators asked you? It wasn't like she was asking for oxys and got M30s.
Yeah, that's what it says. Yeah.
Do you recall your answer to that question?
I do not.
So the undercover officer that was on the stand right now when the live feed was down, by the way, that is back up right now, was actually working to counter the testimony here from Robert Crozier, talking about the differences in some of the drugs. This was an expert on the stand talking about narcotics, when they came on the scene, when was fentanyl present in those imitation or fake oxycodone pills. It was really getting into the nitty-gritty of the drug scene to lay the sort of foundation for the prosecution, because it is another one of their witnesses. Now, coming up at 5 o'clock, something out of the courtroom. We're going to have a live conversation with the court security director talking about the first week. How did the public respond to this? How many people showed up? And how many people did they have to toss out of the courtroom during the trial so far? And why did they do it? It's all coming up on 2 News at 5 o'clock. For now, reporting live in Park City, Brian Schnee, KUTV 2 News.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. So during the trial in the first week, I've been doing a breakdown with attorney Nathan Evershed. He's not associated with this case. He's a defense attorney. I've been doing it on our YouTube page because we are going in depth on what happens in court each and every day. I will be back on our YouTube page tonight at 6 o'clock if you want to weigh in. You can stay with 2 News as we continue to follow this trial over the next 4 weeks. You can head over to KUTV.com, get caught up on all of the testimony from this week, and find all of our past reporting over the last several years leading up to the trial.